When a naval blockade becomes a geopolitical trap, both sides discover that controlling a strait is easier than controlling the consequences. Right now, the world is watching two powers locked in a standoff where neither can afford to win and neither can afford to lose. The latest development from Tehran reveals the depth of this crisis. Iran has submitted a 14-point proposal that reads less like a peace offering and more like a manifesto of demands. The proposal calls for resolving all issues within 30 days, not the 2-month ceasefire Washington wanted. It demands guarantees against future military aggression, withdrawal of American forces from Iran's periphery, an end to the naval blockade, release of frozen Iranian assets, payment of reparations, lifting of sanctions, ending all hostilities, including in Lebanon, and a new mechanism governing the Strait of Hormuz. This is not a negotiation. This is Tehran declaring that it will not return to the status quo that existed before February 28th. What we are witnessing is a conflict that neither side planned properly. The United States and Israel launched surprise airstrikes on Iran on February 28th, targeting military and government sites and assassinating Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The operation was designed to achieve regime change and cripple Iran's nuclear program. Instead, it triggered a regional conflagration that has paralyzed global energy markets and exposed the limits of American military dominance. Iran's response was not military defeat, it was strategic defiance. Tehran closed the Strait of Hormuz, issued warnings forbidding passage through the strait, boarded and attacked merchant ships, and laid sea mines. This single decision transformed a military confrontation into an economic siege that punishes the entire world. The Trump administration's reaction reveals the miscalculation. After talks in Islamabad failed to produce an agreement, Trump ordered the United States Navy to begin a blockade of the strait to prevent the passage of any ships transiting through Iranian ports. The result is what analysts are calling a dual blockade. America blocks ships going to Iran, Iran blocks ships crossing the strait, and the world economy bleeds. Here is the brutal arithmetic of this standoff. Before the war, about 25% of the world's seaborne oil trade and 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Since the war began, traffic has been reduced to a trickle, with just 154 vessels recorded crossing in the entire month of March, compared to the usual 3,000 vessels per month. The economic devastation is already spreading across continents. Brent crude oil surged from around $70 per barrel to over $120 at its peak. American gasoline prices have climbed above $4 per gallon, up more than $1 since the conflict started. Liquefied natural gas prices have spiked nearly 60%. Jet fuel costs have exploded 95%, forcing airlines to raise ticket prices and baggage fees. But the real damage goes far deeper than fuel prices. Iran struck Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, causing a 17% reduction in Qatar's LNG production capacity. The damage will take 3 to 5 years to fully repair. Qatar supplies 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. When that supply chain breaks, countries across Asia scramble to find alternatives at any price. The inflation numbers tell the story of a world economy under assault. Food prices are surging because fertilizer depends on natural gas. Transportation costs are climbing because diesel fuel has become expensive. Supply chains are fracturing because ships refuse to enter the Persian Gulf. In Iran itself, bread and cereal prices have increased by 140%. Oil and fats are up 219%. Dairy products have climbed 117%. The geopolitical calculations behind this crisis are complex. Trump launched this operation believing he could destroy Iran's military capabilities quickly and force regime change. He declared victory multiple times, claiming the Iranian military had been destroyed. He threatened to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age if it didn't reopen the strait and surrender its nuclear program. But Iran did not collapse. Instead, it appointed a new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of the assassinated leader. The regime consolidated power under the Revolutionary Guards, and Tehran discovered that it didn't need to defeat America militarily, it only needed to make the economic pain unbearable. This is why Iran's 14-point proposal is so revealing. Tehran is not asking for peace. It is demanding compensation, guarantees, and a complete restructuring of the regional security architecture. Iran wants war reparations. It wants frozen assets released. It wants American forces withdrawn from the region. It wants a new mechanism to control the Strait of Hormuz. These demands are designed to be unacceptable to Washington. Trump has already said he cannot imagine the proposal being acceptable, and that Iran has not paid a big enough price for what it has done over the last 47 years. He warned that strikes could resume if Tehran misbehaves. But here is the strategic dilemma that Trump faces. Military escalation will only drive oil prices higher and inflict more economic pain on American consumers and allies. The ceasefire has already lasted 3 weeks, and every day the strait remains partially closed costs the global economy billions of dollars. Resuming bombing will not reopen the waterway. It will only guarantee that it stays closed longer. Meanwhile, Iran's strategy is becoming clear. Tehran is internationalizing the costs of this war. By targeting energy infrastructure across the Gulf, Iran has raised the price of escalation until pressure for de-escalation builds. Iranian officials are now openly stating that they control nearly 2,000 kilometers of coastline along the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, and they will make this area a source of power for Iran and insecurity for its enemies. The shadow fleet operating in the strait reveals another dimension of Iran's strategy. Despite the American naval blockade, vessels using fake flags, disabled tracking signals, and shell companies have continued moving through Iranian-controlled routes. By late April, at least 26 ships had managed to bypass the American blockade line in both directions. Iran has even published maps showing alternative routes through its territorial waters, enabling checks by Iranian naval authorities while charging transit fees of over $1 million per ship. This is not just military resistance. This is Iran building a parallel economic system in the middle of a war zone, extracting revenue while American warships patrol nearby. The War Powers Resolution deadline has become another flashpoint. The 60-day mark for military operations without congressional authorization passed on May 1st. Trump argues that the ceasefire stopped the clock, so he doesn't need congressional approval. Legal experts disagree, pointing out that American forces are still enforcing a blockade militarily and maintaining a massive force ready to strike. The administration is trying to have it both ways, claiming hostilities have terminated while simultaneously maintaining operational pressure. Congressional Democrats have accused Trump of waging an unauthorized war of choice based on a demonstrably false premise of an imminent Iranian threat. But the Republican-controlled Congress has shown little appetite for challenging the president's authority. Speaker Johnson has stated that America is not at war with Iran, despite the blockade, the carrier strike groups, and the more than 100 fighter and surveillance aircraft deployed to the region. The global response reveals the isolation of American policy. NATO allies have refused to support the blockade. Spain denied the United States access to its air bases, prompting Trump to threaten trade cuts. The United Kingdom, Australia, and the European Union have all expressed lack of support for the plan, favoring de-escalation and freedom of navigation instead. Britain and France have promoted an alternative multinational mission to reopen the strait, deliberately excluding American leadership. China and Russia vetoed a UN Security Council resolution on the Strait of Hormuz that would have called for coordinated defensive efforts. Beijing has called for freedom of navigation to be guaranteed as the shared call of the international community, positioning itself as defender of international law against American unilateralism. The economic winners and losers of this conflict are becoming apparent. American oil companies are profiting enormously from surging prices. United States exports of crude and petroleum products have risen to nearly 13 million barrels per day. Venezuela and Brazil are seeing revenue windfalls. But oil-importing nations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America are facing severe inflationary pressure and social unrest. Europe is taking the biggest economic hit because the continent had already been cut off from Russian energy supplies and now faces disruption from the Middle East as well. The International Monetary Fund says Britain will suffer the most of any major economy because of its exposure to natural gas prices. Food price inflation in Britain could triple by the end of the year. Governments in Ireland and Germany are scrambling with fuel subsidies and tax cuts to prevent political collapse. The humanitarian consequences are mounting. Flights in and out of the Middle East have come to a near-complete stop, stranding residents, expatriates, and tourists. Dubai International Airport, one of the world's busiest, was damaged by drone strikes and operates only at limited capacity. The conflict between Hezbollah and Israel has escalated into full war in Lebanon, killing more than 2,000 civilians and militants. Iran itself is experiencing economic freefall. The currency has collapsed. Protests that began in December have spread across the country. The internet has been blacked out, cutting off self-employed Iranians from their online platforms. Layoffs are widespread as domestic and foreign suppliers are either attacked or unable to transport products. Yet the Iranian regime shows no sign of capitulation. The Revolutionary Guards issued a statement saying that the United States must choose between an impossible military operation or a bad deal. Iranian generals warn that surprise measures are planned for the enemy beyond their imagination. Tehran appears willing to endure economic devastation rather than surrender on terms it considers humiliating. The stalemate is now entering a dangerous phase. Trump's rejection of Iran's proposal means negotiations are effectively frozen. Both sides are signaling their ability to endure a prolonged standoff. But prolonged standoffs in energy choke points have a way of producing accidents, miscalculations, and unintended escalations. Iranian gunboats have already attacked merchant vessels that receive permission to cross, including Greek and Indian flagged ships. Rockets have damaged container ships off the coast of Oman. A cruise ship reported that the Revolutionary Guards threatened to destroy it via radio. These incidents suggest that even during a ceasefire, the Strait remains a combat zone where rules are unclear and restraint is fragile. The political pressure on Trump is mounting domestically. Gasoline above $4 per gallon is politically toxic in America. Inflation at 3.3%, the highest level in nearly 2 years, undermines Trump's economic messaging. Consumer anger about fuel costs, airfare hikes, and shipping surcharges is building. Spirit Airlines has already ceased operations, citing rising fuel costs, despite administration attempts to save the company. Trump's public statements reveal his frustration. He has said that maybe America would be better off not making a deal at all. He has unleashed social media rants against Iran. He has threatened to resume bombing while simultaneously claiming that American operations have been so successful that Iran would need 20 years to rebuild if America left right now. This rhetorical contradiction captures the strategic bind. If America has truly devastated Iran's military, why hasn't Iran surrendered? If Iran is so desperate for a deal, why are its proposals so maximalist? If the strait can be reopened through military pressure, why does the blockade continue into its third week with no resolution? The answer is that military dominance does not automatically translate into political outcomes. America can destroy Iranian infrastructure. It cannot force Iran to accept terms that the regime considers existential surrender. Iran can close the strait. It cannot force America to withdraw from the region or lift decades of sanctions. Both sides have escalation options. Neither has a clear path to victory. The energy markets are pricing in a long crisis. Despite the ceasefire, oil prices remain elevated because traders do not believe the strait will return to normal operations anytime soon. Even if Iran announces the strait is open, insurance costs and security concerns will keep commercial traffic far below pre-war levels. The infrastructure damage in Qatar will take years to repair. Alternative supply routes cannot compensate for the loss of 20% of global oil trade indefinitely. Food security is emerging as the next crisis. Fertilizer shortages are spreading because natural gas is the feedstock for fertilizer production and natural gas supplies are disrupted. Countries across South Asia and Africa that depend on imported fertilizer are facing the prospect of reduced agricultural yields. Wheat prices are climbing. Less wealthy food importing nations are under acute stress. The geopolitical realignment this crisis is producing may outlast the conflict itself. American unilateralism has alienated traditional allies. European nations are openly discussing strategic autonomy from Washington. Gulf states that hosted American forces are now questioning whether American security guarantees are worth the economic devastation. China is positioning itself as a voice for international order against American adventurism. Iran, despite its economic suffering, is emerging with a narrative of resistance that resonates across the global south. Tehran's message is simple. We were attacked without provocation. We defended ourselves, and we will not surrender our sovereignty, no matter the cost. This narrative finds an audience in countries that resent American dominance and support a multipolar world order. The question now is whether either side has the wisdom to find an exit ramp. Trump needs a deal that he can sell as victory to domestic audiences. Iran needs guarantees that prevent future attacks and provide economic relief. The gap between these positions remains enormous. Pakistan, which brokered the initial ceasefire, continues to serve as intermediary. But mediation only works when both sides want a settlement more than they want continued confrontation. Right now, both Washington and Tehran appear to believe that time is on their side. Trump thinks economic pressure will eventually break Iran's will. Iran thinks global economic pain will eventually force America to compromise. Both may be wrong. The more likely outcome is a frozen conflict that produces neither victory nor resolution. The strait remains partially closed, the blockades continue, energy prices stay elevated, inflation persists, and the global economy adjusts to a new normal of reduced trade, higher costs, and greater instability. This is the perverse logic of modern great power competition. Wars are easy to start and almost impossible to end cleanly. Leaders make decisions based on assumptions that prove false in contact with reality. What begins as a limited operation to eliminate a nuclear threat becomes an open-ended standoff with global ramifications, and the world pays the price for miscalculations made in Washington and Tehran. The Iran crisis reveals a fundamental truth about power in the 21st century. Control of territory matters less than control of choke points. Military superiority matters less than economic leverage. And the ability to inflict pain matters more than the ability to achieve political objectives. Both America and Iran can hurt each other badly. Neither can compel the other to surrender. This is not victory. This is stalemate with catastrophic spillover effects.